Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sexual assault is a difficult topic, as my colleague just mentioned. And I would like to start out my remarks on this topic by saying that we need to believe survivors. Survivors can be any gender, but they are more likely to be women or non-binary folks. We need to believe these people. We need to support them. But most importantly, Mr. Speaker, it is our opinion that we need to dismantle the systemic barriers that perpetuate the cycles of sexual violence and assault. So I believe, Mr. Speaker, that that is our role in this chamber. I think there is an ecosystem required to engender the cultural change that we need to shift this cycle that has been going on, who knows, maybe since humans took their first steps. But regardless of how long it's been going on, it needs to stop. And as legislators, I would suggest that our role is to change the systems that perpetuate that. And those systems can be the big systems, so that can be core, stable funding for all of the incredible frontline organizations who know how to do this work. So folks like the YWCA, the TESS network of women's centers across the province, the Elizabeth Fry Society, Coverdale, the people working with women who are disclosing, obviously transition houses and women's centers. But it can also be on the micro level. So it can be calling out the misogyny that we see on display. It happens in this chamber. It happens in the locker room. It happens in school. Yesterday, or the day before, I made a member statement about the situation at a school recently in the Annapolis Valley where a woman, a girl, sat down and the boy in front of her was wearing a t-shirt that read, and I have tabled this document, "'Tis the season to be rapey." And I referenced that phrase as being part of rape culture. And my colleague who just spoke said a lot of things that she referenced might make people feel uncomfortable. And the term rape culture is a term that would make people feel uncomfortable. But I think as we seek to dismantle these systems, we need to be really careful about the language we use. And this is the kind of language we need to use. It's not a joke. It's not funny. It is harmful. And it is language like that, it's jokes like that, that have a direct line to the shocking statistics that we see about sexual assault. The member just now shared a personal story. When we talk about topics like this, it is always my inclination not to share the personal story, because for myself, I feel like I want to be able to stand as a woman in this chamber and speak about this from a policy lens, but I will acknowledge that statistically, the majority of us in this chamber have experienced sexual assault. That is just absolute fact. It's incontrovertible, and it's terrible. And so to my colleagues in this chamber who have not experienced that, think about that for a minute, that statistically speaking, the vast majority of your female colleagues in this chamber have been sexually assaulted in their lifetime. Of your female staff, of your family, of all of the women that you know. It's a sort of common sense. You see the statistics, and then when you drill down and look at it, it never ceases to be shocking. A 2019 telephone survey conducted for DCS, the Department of Community Services, found that a majority of residents of Nova Scotia think that domestic violence can be provoked. So think about that for a minute. Yeah, well, she was asking for it, right? We hear that. She was asking for it. Again, these are phrases. I'm 44 years old, so, I've lived enough years that things stick. How many times have we heard that phrase? She was asking for it, she was asking for it. And so now we know it's sort of in the zeitgeist that we say, well, that's wrong, that's bad, but it doesn't stop you from hearing that. And it's not true. You don't ask for it. There's never a situation when it is okay for a woman to be assaulted in all the ways that the member previous described in the criminal code. It's never okay. If we are going to stop this cycle, I would say that all of the work that our caucus has done, that all these folks on the front lines are doing, simply to achieve gender equity in every field, to lift up women, to make sure that women are able to live fully human lives, women and non-binary folks. That's a precondition. That's a precondition, I would suggest, for changing the culture of sexual assault. And if we're going to do that, we have to tackle the gender roles and stereotypes and biases that we have. And so when we bring forward legislation like changing the gender markers in vital statistics, I think often there's this view of like, oh, that's another niche NDP bill. Like, oh, of course the NDP would bring a bill like that, instead of thinking about important things like tax breaks or whatever it is that everyone else thinks is important. But I suggest, Mr. Speaker, that it is incredibly important because in the NDP, and I'm sure we have other colleagues in other parties, we understand that this is a life cycle, this is an ecosystem, and it starts with one word and it ends up in violence. And this happens all the time, and we've all seen it in our own lifetimes, and it needs to stop, and we can play a really big role in that. So I would join my colleague who just spoke in suggesting that we have a very strong role to play. And again, I want to close by saying that there are remarkable people in this province, and I think in my own constituency of women like Charlene Gagnon, who has led the incredible work that the YWCA has done on human trafficking, but many, many, many others, Emma Halpern with the Elizabeth Fry Society, and I will note that criminalized women, Mr. Speaker, statistically have almost all suffered sexual assault and sexualized trauma in their lifetime. So think about that. How does that impact your life choices and your life outcomes? And so I think about these folks on the front lines, and I know beyond the shadow of a doubt that they are under-supported, they are underfunded, they are underappreciated. And so my contribution to this conversation, to this very important topic in this room at this time, is to say, if we are serious about ending sexual assault, about breaking that cycle, breaking the cycle of violence, then we need to put our resources, our beliefs, our money where our mouth is. And these organizations need stable, multi-year funding to do the work that they do, to do the work that very often our judicial system, our constituency offices, our frontline workers refer people to them constantly to do. So government often refers to these folks on the front line as their partners. Be a partner. Be a partner. Give these folks the funding they need, create the systems that are sustainable, ensure that individual MLAs don't have to go begging to have sexual assault nurse examiners and other sexual assault services in their constituencies. Just make sure that they exist everywhere. And with those actions, I believe that all of us in this chamber, that this government can make a dent. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.